Hey, if you're thinking about starting a podcast and unsure what goes into it, I want you to watch this video. Because my name is Hector Santiesteban, and I've spent much of the last decade trying to figure out how to produce profitable podcasts. And this video is going to show you the 9 things that you need to have dialed in and ready before you ever launch your podcast. And so the first one is going to be really simple. The first one is your show name. And this is often overlooked, but oftentimes one of the most important parts of creating and designing your show. Now, in another video, we're going to talk about how to figure out who your target audience is, how to decide what your unique perspective is, how to design and create your unique personality. But you've really got to make sure that your title, the name of your podcast, really resonates with your audience from both a relatability standpoint, and it's also got to tell them a little bit about what your show is about. Yes, people always point to podcasts like the Joe Rogan Experience or shows that are named after the host. The problem is that if you don't already have an established presence, if you don't already have an established persona, and people don't know who you are, then they're not going to know what the show is about. And so, for example, one of our most successful shows is called The Industrial Cybersecurity Insider. Now, if you think about that, what is that show about? It tells you exactly what the show is going to be about. And so someone who is in that industry, is in that niche, they're going to know what to expect. And it's going to call to exactly the right types of people. So make sure that your show is named appropriately and that you've got your show name dialed in before you go any further. This leads me to the second thing that you want to have dialed in, and that's your show description. And the reason is that the show title is going to tell people what the show is about, and the show description is going to help you get found. People, when they are searching for podcasts, they'll do a brief skim of the description, and so you want to make sure that it's written correctly, and you also want to make sure that it has the right search terms so that you're showing up in searches when people are looking for your type of show. The third thing that you want to have dialed in is your categories. And this also helps with discoverability, it also helps with search, and it helps with giving your show a better chance of being seen and being discovered. The fourth thing that you want to have dialed in is your cover art. And this is a square, oftentimes 3,000 by 3,000 pixel picture. And this is going to be like your book cover. This is going to be like your front page of your magazine. This is going to be what people see when they are searching for shows. It's going to be the first thing that comes up for them. So you want to make sure that it's captivating. You want to make sure that it's easy to recognize. You want to make sure that it's easy to read. And you also want to make sure that it fits the vibe and the topic of your show. Yes, it might be helpful to have a picture or a headshot of you on the cover if you're the host, but it also may be helpful to focus more on the topic. That's a decision that you've got to make depending on the direction of your show. The next thing that you want to put together before you launch is a trailer. And it's helpful to have this both in audio and video version. And so in order to do that, you might have to actually have some recordings done, or you might actually have to have some content to be able to pull from. But having a trailer is going to be really helpful in getting your podcast's RSS feed up, which we'll talk about next. And it's also going to help in promoting the launch and letting people know that your podcast is coming. Now, one part of the trailer, or one component of the trailer, if you will, is the musical intro or the music in general. This is something that's really helpful to have dialed in from the very beginning. This is the part at the beginning that introduces the show, and it could be read by the host or it could be read by someone else. But it's really, really important to tee up the show and get the listeners and the audience ready for the episode. Now, once you've got those things done, you're ready to set up your RSS feed. And this is actually simpler than it sounds. There are a lot of hosting providers. In fact, Spotify is one of our favorite ones, and they have a free platform that allows you to set up your own RSS feed and get your podcast set up in literally minutes. But once you've got your RSS feed set up, you can have people go and start to subscribe. You can have people start to follow it so that when your podcast starts to put out episodes, they get notified as soon as they do. Now that brings us to 8 things that you need to have before your podcast is ready to go. The 9th is simply a schedule of episodes or topics that you're going to cover. We encourage people to get at least a minimum of 5, ideally 10 episodes recorded before anything ever publishes. That way you're not constantly worrying about recording the next episode, and you have a little bit of a runway and a little bit of room to breathe and both promote those episodes as well. And so to review, you want to have your show title. You want to have that dialed in. You want to have your description, your categories. You want to make sure that you've got a cover art that is going to attract the right types of people. You want to make sure that you've got a trailer that is enticing, that has some great music and even some visual elements if you're doing it on video. You want to make sure that your RSS feed is set up and then have all of the topics or the guests dialed in. So that way you are ready to have a successful podcast. Now, I mentioned this is just the beginning because the real work begins once your show is launched. So if you want more tips on how to be successful with your podcast, make sure you hit the follow button or subscribe wherever it is that you're listening. And if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the comments and I'll come back and try and answer them as I can.